Well, good morning. It's good to be here in the house of the Lord. Be with those that are traveling. Let's keep them in our prayers. We're going to continue our journey through Acts, and specifically Paul's journey. We know that Paul has been facing quite a bit of controversy since he's returned to Jerusalem. The Jews, the Pharisees, the Sadducees, brought him before the Sanhedrin. They now are making, they want him tried, but there is a problem. He is a Roman citizen. And as soon as the captain of this Jerusalem found this out, that halted all their plans, didn't it? They had to treat Paul in a different manner. He was not just a Jew who could be dealt with by the Jewish courts. He had rights as a Roman citizen, didn't he? And that captain was very careful not to violate those. He completely changed his whole premise on dealing with him when he found out he was a Roman citizen, didn't he? So we're going to find out today the continuation of this story. We know that we left the Jews, 40 of them had taken a vow to do what? To end Paul's life. They took a vow. And we know that in the Old Testament, these same Jews, a vow was what? It was big. It wasn't taken lightly. It was a serious matter. And they took it a vow that they would not eat or drink until they killed this man. And we left off at verse 16 yesterday, where Paul's nephew, who was probably a Pharisee himself, since that seemed to be a family organization, an organization that Paul's family had been part of. His father was a Pharisee, so it's reasonable to think that his nephew was a Pharisee. He heard about the plan to kill Paul, and he went and told Paul. So that's where we're going to pick the story up today, right after the nephew comes to the castle. So, in verse 17, then Paul called one of the centurions unto him and said, bring this young man unto the chief captain, for he hath a certain thing to tell him. So what is interesting about this young man? He not only has been allowed entrance into the castle, he's also been allowed what? An audience with Paul, prisoner. But we know that he is a prisoner for, it's more like protective custody, isn't it? It is. So he's allowed. So why would this nephew been allowed these pleasures? Because usually when you go up to a Roman castle and you knock on the door, they're not going to let you in, you know. But we know that Paul was a Roman citizen. We also know that the Holy Spirit is still very much working here, isn't it? So he took him and brought him to the chief captain and said, Paul, the prisoner, called me unto him and prayed me to bring this young man unto thee, who hath something to say to thee. So it doesn't seem like this story was hard to sell, was it? Did the young man had to convince Paul of this conspiracy? Did he then have to, did Paul have a hard time convincing the centurion that this was? No, because this was in very much character with what was going on at this time in Jerusalem. So in 19, then the chief captain took him by the hand and went with him aside privately and asked him, what is it that thou hast to tell me? So the chief captain himself gave him audience, took him by the hand and said, come here. What is so important that you have to tell me? So that's really important, because that tells you that the captain wants what? He wants the information, doesn't he? So he's giving an ear to this story. He's listening to it. And there's lots of reasons, and we've already said Roman citizen, Holy Spirit's dwelling. So he wants to find out. He wants the truth. And he said, the Jews have agreed to desire thee, that thou wouldest bring Paul tomorrow unto the council, as though they would inquire somewhat of him more perfectly. So he's telling him the plan, isn't he? He goes, I am privy to this. They're going to ask you to bring him back before the council. They have some more questions. So when, in a real trial, they call that recalling a witness that has testified, but then something happens and they want to reaffirm a point. So they will recall that witness to clarify an issue or to question further on a situation. That's what the plan is. Because, is that a reasonable request from a court? It was. So there's no thing. It was the perfect plan from the assassin's viewpoint, because it was a reasonable request and a lawful proceeding. But God has intervened through many people, isn't he? But do not thou yield unto them. Do not be tricked by this request. For there lie in wait for him of them more than 40 men, which have bound themselves with an oath that they will neither eat nor drink till they have killed him. And now they are ready, looking for a promise from thee. So this is a detailed description of the plan. And a concerning point is how many men are involved in this. Okay, you think about when we used to go to the football games of the boys, and we'd look across at the football team. How many football players were there on the team? There's usually 40, 50. There was a lot. Most of them didn't get to play, but was that not a big crowd of men? It was. What could 40 men do if they were angry and wanted to do harm to somebody? How many people would it take to defray an attack from 40 people? Yeah, it would. It's no small number, is it? I mean, you look at some of the things going on in large cities where youth are taking over cities at night and just ransacking it, and they are having a hard time dealing with them because there's many of them. It's a large number. You got 30, 40, 50 kids, all doing nefarious things. It's hard to contain, isn't it? So that number is going to get the captain's attention, isn't it? Because he can't send 3 or 4 centurions to escort Paul down there, can he? No. Looking at it from a strategic viewpoint only, it is a serious matter from his perspective, isn't it? Well, let's see how he deals with that. So the chief captain then let the young man depart and charged him, see thou tell no man that thou hast shown these things to me. So he believes him. He's going to send him on his way, and he's telling him to do what? Don't tell anybody that you have told me this. Because I have, as the captain, I now have the element of surprise because I am privy to their plans, and they don't know that. That's really important in matters like this. And he called unto him 2 centurions, saying, make ready 200 soldiers to go to Caesarea, and 70 at spearmen, and 200 at the third hour, 200 spearmen, and at the third hour of the night. So how many soldiers is he prepared here?
Well, you didn't mention the horsemen too.
Yeah, and there's 70 horsemen. So it works out to be about 470 soldiers. Is he taking this plan serious? He's leaving nothing to doubt. Because, first of all, it's not going to look good to Rome if he allows a big riot to happen and loses control of the city, right? That's not good for him in his position. Secondly, he still has to make sure he protects this Roman citizen, doesn't it? So he took this serious and he prepared adequately. Now, he's not doing this because he loves the Lord, as far as we know, is he? He's doing this just from the viewpoint, the standpoint that he's doing his job very thoroughly. And we've talked about why. And we can look at our lives and the way we prepare when we do things. I mean, especially if we're doing something godly, do we need to make adequate preparations to deal with the scenario? Like a Bible study, like church, like witnessing to people. God will always be there to help us, but it is good to have plans. It's good to have what if scenarios in your mind. So if somebody asks you a question about how was church Sunday, you are ready to go. You have prepared for that possible outcome, haven't you? Well, the captain is prepared for his possible outcome. And they're supposed to leave the third hour of the night. So that's about 9 p.m. So, and provide them beasts. And provide them beasts, that they may set Paul on and bring him safely unto Felix the governor. So not only are they having this battle plan, all these soldiers available, they're telling you, and you get something for Paul to ride too, and bring all of his belongings with him. We are going to make sure that he does not suffer while he's under my control. That's what he's protecting his position. Because they're sending him to Felix the governor. And he wrote a letter after this matter. So the captain also sent a letter with this entourage, a letter of introduction to Felix, explaining why he's done this, right? Because the governor is going to wonder when almost 500 soldiers appear at his gates, isn't he? He's going to wonder what's going on. So he wrote a letter explaining this. And Claudius Lysias unto the most excellent governor Felix sendeth greetings. This man was taken of the Jews and should have been killed of them. Then I, with an army, and rescued him, having understood that he was a Roman citizen. So he's making his position and what he did clear right off the bat, isn't he? The Jews were going to kill this man, and when I found out that he was a Roman citizen, I interceded. And I would have known the cause, therefore they accused him. I brought him forth into their council. So he gave them their dues. He respected the Sanhedrin court, didn't he, by allowing him to be put before them, whom I perceive to be accused of questions of their law, but to have nothing laid to his charge worthy of death or bond. So he's saying they found the only accusations they levied against Paul was that he had broken Jewish law. And he further stated that he found there was no charges worthy of punishment or death, which is what they wanted, wasn't it? And when it was told me how that the Jews laid in wait for the man, I sent straightway to thee and gave commandment to his accusers also to say therefore thee that they had against him farewell. So, this is a pretty good letter that he's sending to Felix, isn't he? He's putting the important details. When he found out about this plan to take his life, he interceded and sent him to Felix. And he told those that accused Paul what he was doing. I imagine it was after the 9th hour, though. I was imagining it was after the entourage had left. Then the soldiers, as it was commanded them, took Paul and brought him by night to Antipatris. And on the morrow they left the horsemen to go with him and return to the castle. So, he's explained the position and that he carried out his plan. So, in verse 33, who, when they came to Caesarea and delivered the epistle to the governor, presented Paul also before you. So, how far is Caesarea from Jerusalem? And then about 65 miles, if I remember right. Something like that. So, in this day's travel, that would not be a day's journey, would it? No. With this big of entourage, it would probably be 3 or 4 days, Because with that many horses and beasts of burden, you have to let them rest, can't you? You can't push them all night. Now, what do we know about Felix? Felix became the governor of this region in about 52 AD, and he ruled in this position for about 7 years. So, he's now going to be before Felix for a possible judgment. And in 34, and when the governor had read the letter, he asked of what province he was. For when he understood that he was Cilicia. So the first thing that Felix wants to do is what? Find out where Paul actually is from. And because it's important for him to verify whether he had jurisdiction over this matter or not. Because we know one thing about Roman governors. If they could push a serious matter off on another governor, they did, didn't they? They were always trying to push the blame to somebody else's court. Because the penalty for messing up in the Roman Empire was what? It was death. It was exile. It was losing all of your property and valuables, wasn't it? So they always were trying to protect that which they had. And Felix is no different. So he wanted to make sure he had jurisdiction over Paul. And he determined that he did. I will hear thee, said he, when thine accusers are also come. And he commanded him to be kept in the house, in Herod's judgment hall. Now, I looked into this a little bit. Herod's judgment hall. They're in the palace of Herod, and there was adjoining apartments. This is where they kept Paul during this time because he doesn't warrant going to prison yet, right? Because he's a Roman citizen. But they can't let him go either, right? So he's going to be under kind of house arrest. And the interesting thing is he actually spent 2 years because they also were waiting for any of the accusers that wanted to travel and bear witness against Paul to Felix. And so he was there for about 2 years, which is a long time. And we know that when Paul was, detained, that he did nothing. He studied, he prayed, he wrote epistles, didn't he? He always stayed. It didn't matter what circumstance Paul was in, he always was about the Lord's work, wasn't he? And that is what I want us to remember today. It doesn't matter what scenario we're in, whether it's a small or large, always be about the Father's business, right? Always be prepared for that opportunity to witness. I thank you for your time. We're going to close with a song.